Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Culture Clash Podcast, where a Russian and American consultant discuss and debate some of the hot topics in the news this week. With that, I'm Michael.
I'm Vlad. Hello, everyone.
First topic we're going to be discussing is the outlook for the Trump administration, what we can expect from the next 4 years, the state of the Democratic Party, where do they go from here? Question 3 is the upcoming German elections going to be an inflection point for the rise of the far right? And fourth question is, what is the outlook for Starbucks? Is it going to remain the king of coffee? And with that, we can get started. You wanted to make an announcement before we started?
Yeah, before we start, remember one of our first episodes, we were talking about Linkin Park, and they're coming back.
I do remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So last week, a couple of days ago, they actually dropped their new album, and it's great. If you haven't listened to it, you should. They have got, like, on average, 3 million listeners on Spotify alone over the couple of days already. And the banger Emptiness Machine, let's put it over here once again.
It's good to see you again.
How this ends, I let you cut me open just to watch me back.
Got already 265 million listeners on Spotify alone. So they're coming back with a bang. Let's see if it stays. Let's see if it's a future success. They also announced the world tour. So I don't know. Me personally as a fan, I'm very hopeful.
Are you hopeful? Or are you just trying to start to make the case that you won the argument and that I was wrong about it a couple weeks ago? Because that's what it sounds like you're getting at. Is that what you're getting at?
No. I could, but no. It's just personally me being a fan, quite happy about it. The album is great. You should listen to this.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it yet. Maybe I need to, and maybe I'm going to turn out to be wrong on that one. I think that prediction is feeling a little bit less confident than I was maybe a couple weeks ago. But no, good to hear. Good to hear for them.
Okay.
Excellent. So shall we start?
Yeah. Do you want me to start with the question here?
Yeah, sure. Cool. Go for it.
So, Trump won. Are you happy?
I don't want to get into politics.
Okay.
I don't want to get into politics and my own personal views and whatnot. I'm happy with the prediction. I'm happy that that we called it correctly and all that. But I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. So he has made a lot of announcements last week or like the week before. What should we expect from the Trump administration? Do you think that they will fulfill their promises? Should we see a lot of changes internally and externally based on these promises and the new plans that they announced?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think this was one of the debates that people had is what is the second Trump administration going to be like? Is it going to be like the first? Is it going to be more moderate, more sort of farther to the right? Is it going to be more what Trump campaigned on? I think there's a mix of views on that. I think it's becoming more and more clear, though, that it's going to be a very Trumpian second term, which will be different than the first term. The first term, again, I think you had a lot of folks in the administration and a lot of people who didn't necessarily fully agree with the president on a lot of issues. And what we're seeing, and I'll sort of walk us through the way the cabinet is shaping up and sort of what some of his appointments will look like. But I would say it's looking like it's going to be a different second term. Again, more of a Trumpian term, more aligned with his views, and I think more reflecting what his objectives are. So with that, I would say, again, very high level, what we're seeing with the initial cabinet appointments or sort of planned appointments is loyalty is first and foremost very important. So this is something that, again, a lot of people were talking about last time. There were people in the administration that Trump feels and a lot of people who support Trump feel that they didn't necessarily agree with the president on a lot of issues. So Trump, I think, wants to make sure that's not the case this time. So I'll take you very high level through the cabinet appointments just to give people sort of a taste or an overview of what that's looking like and sort of a high level analysis to what we can expect. So if we go into, for example, the State Department. So Trump's going to be appointing Marco Rubio. I don't know if you've heard of this guy.
No, State Department is the Foreign Affairs.
Foreign Affairs, exactly. So yeah, good point. So everybody calls it something a little bit different. But then I want to highlight some of the commonalities that you're going to see with some of these appointments. So Marco Rubio, he's a long-term senator now from Florida, big supporter of the president. Again, some of the things that are specific to Rubio, he's very much a China hawk. So aggressive on China, strong on China, in terms of labeling them as a rival and wanting to formulate policy to put pressure on the Chinese regime. Same thing with Iran, so I'd consider him an Iran hawk as well. And then, interestingly, when it comes to Russia, your home country, It's a little bit more nuanced, very similar to Trump. So Trump is very clear, or had been very clear during the campaign, that China is probably the number one rival, as he would identify, to the U.S., that Iran is a rival of the U.S., but that he views Russia not necessarily in the same way. So Marco Rubio high levels reflected that as of late. You've got this guy who is a little bit less well known, a guy named Pete Hegseth for Defense Department. So this is an ex-combat veteran, Bronze Star, recipient, ex-Wall Street, Princeton graduate, Harvard graduate. But his real claim to fame has been that he's been a Fox News co-host over most of the last 10 years. So a lot of people are coming out and criticizing the appointment. What you're just putting some talking head as the head of the largest defense department on the planet, But again, one of the biggest things is he's a big time Trump loyalist. Some of the, not famous statements, but some of the statements that he's made sort of most clearly as to how he'd like to be the defense secretary revolves around making the military as anti-woke as possible. So again, a lot of debate around that, but he's very much against woke in the military.
I'm trying to imagine woke in the military.
Yeah, so that's a whole other thing. I mean, we could even maybe put some TikToks of some of the examples of, again, these are just people in the military who are being woke. It's a deeper debate as to how woke the military really is.
Hi, my name is Johnny, and I use he, him pronouns.
Hi, and I'm Conchi, and I use she, her pronouns.
And we're here to talk about pronouns.
This is the story of a soldier who operates your nation's Patriot missile defense systems. With a little girl raised by 2 moms. I also marched for equality.
The Defense Department is paying the surgery costs for a transgender service member.
And we understand, and I want to understand white rage.
But anything, for example, he's against transgenders in the military, stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, by and large, he's made that very clear, very, very anti-woke. Another China hawk, Iran hawk, and again, very similar on Russia, where he's a bit in the middle. So I think that's going to be interesting, and that's one of the themes that I've been seeing. His most controversial proposed appointment to date is a guy named Matt Gaetz. So this guy has been a congressman since. Have you heard of this guy, Matt Gaetz? You haven't heard of any of these guys?
No. For me,
it's all brand new.
All the appointments for me, they sound like no names.
Okay, excellent. Well, then I'm gonna hopefully, tell you a little bit about these guys. So again, most controversial proposed appointment by far. He's been a congressman since 2010. Former lawyer, staunch Trump ally. So big time Trump ally. Has openly said that he's MAGA all the way, and he's going to support Trump no matter what the case is, rooting out corruption, et cetera, et cetera. So these are all sort of very important points that he's made. Again, one of his biggest topics is the deep state or the administrative state, and he really wants to go after that sort of in whatever form that him or Trump would see to do that. And again, it's probably going to be the toughest confirmation for Trump, of all the appointments so far. So one of his Republican colleagues in the House of Representatives, so again, not a Democrat, but a Republican, came out and said that Matt Gaetz has a better shot of having dinner with Queen Elizabeth than getting confirmed. And as you know, Queen Elizabeth is no longer with us. So
dark joke.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Congress people aren't known for their humor, But yeah, so that's kind of that's a major sort of testament to how he's very divisive, right? Even within the Republican Party. Your Interior Secretary is a guy named Doug Burgum. So North Dakota governor, big energy producing state, third biggest producer of energy in the country. So again, he's very much in favor of opening up energy production on U.S. federal land. So again, energy is a common theme. China, Iran, these type of things are some of the themes. The Health and Human Services Secretary proposed appointment, RFK Jr. You've heard? Okay.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's probably the most famous of the proposed appointments. Of course, he's the famous son of Robert F. Kennedy, who was assassinated, and then the nephew of John F. Kennedy, who was also assassinated, the former president. This guy's actually a registered Democrat who endorsed Trump. Again, he's looking to ban chemicals in food. He's looking to, he's opposed to fluoride being in the American water, for example.
I think he was one of the leading anti-vaccination guys.
Yeah, that's a more complicated one. I wouldn't call him totally anti-vaccine. I think he was probably anti-COVID vaccine.
Okay.
I think he's more vaccine skeptic, where he's not totally sold on all the vaccines necessarily. But definitely he has I think, very heterodox views when it comes to some of these health policies, right? So again, whether it's vaccines, whether it's some of the chemicals in food, whether it's pesticides, for example, he's really looking to change a number of the policies around that. So we'll see exactly what he's allowed to do. Trump said he's going to let him run wild as the secretary. So what can he do? What does he try to do is going to be an open question. But that could be an area where you get a lot of change. And again, he has his own slogan called MAHA. So you have MAGA, right? Make America Great Again. His is Make America Healthy Again. So that's again, a bit of RFK Jr. He's very much against the administrative state, deep state as well.
All right.
So again, that's another common theme. Very quickly on energy, you've got a guy named Chris Wright, who's the current CEO of Liberty Energy. So again, a big oil and gas company. He's currently CEO. You're going to make him Secretary of Energy. What do you expect? Pro oil and gas, decrease regulation where you can, increase production where you can. Again, another common theme.
Yes, again, so no green energy, like oil and gas traditional.
I mean, he's not going to ban green energy, but he's definitely not going to support, I think, to the same extent the Democrats would. And I think the Republicans are going to do everything they can to boost oil and gas production, make oil and gas be, again, operate as unencumbered as possible. So the idea being America's got all these resources, don't limit in any way America's capacity to exploit those resources. Okay. So, yeah. But you'll still get your electric cars. You still have your Tesla and all that stuff. CIA director, so his proposal is a guy named John Ratcliffe. This was another sort of questionable, not John Ratcliffe itself, but this was something that a lot of people were focused on, to say, who's the CIA director going to be? Because that's an area where the CIA has come under a lot of criticism, particularly from Trump and a lot of the MAGA folks. So people were worried, in sort of the in the media and in the state apparatus, whether it's the CIA or the intelligence community. And they were wondering, okay, who's Trump going to appoint? Is it going to be somebody who's trying to go after the intelligence community? Is it going to be sort of an ally? And according to what I was reading, CNN was reporting that this was probably the best of the bunch for the intelligence community. So you're not getting this guy who's coming in to say, we're going to tear down the CIA, we're going to do all of these reforms or anything like that. We'll see what comes of it. He's a Trump loyalist, but again, supposedly the pick that they most wanted to see. Then you've got his chief of staff. So it's a woman named Susie Wiles, who was Trump's campaign manager for this cycle.
27-year-old blondie, right? This is
no, that's a press secretary.
Oh,
that's
okay.
a press secretary.
Okay.
No surprise on that, by the way. No surprise. That's a common theme with Trump. He does like the younger blonde women as his press secretaries. Fair enough. I think it works. So yeah, this was Trump's campaign manager from this cycle, right, from 2024. So she's really credited with being a lot of the brains behind the operation. The operation was obviously went really well, right? He won the election and all of that. And it's actually the first woman selected to the role. So Trump embracing a little bit of DE&I, maybe you could call him maybe a DE&I champion even. So that's the chief of staff. Then you've got the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. He's trying to appoint a guy who, when asked about what he would do as the head of the EPA, hasn't said anything about the environment, but instead said he wants to open things up for business. He wants to ease emission standards, make it easier for companies and businesses to be prosperous and all of that, which he came under fire for the reason of, okay, you're the EPA director, Environmental Protection Agency, and yet you don't seem to be all that interested in protecting the environment, so to speak. But again, that's just a criticism. The opposing view is, well, you want to open up things for the economy and you want to fulfill Trump's mission, right, which is boost energy production, make American industry more competitive. Right. Again, similar story. DNI, Director of National Intelligence, is a woman named Tulsi Gabbard. Do you know her? So again, another former Democrat. She actually ran for the Democratic candidacy in 2020, ran against Joe Biden. So in some world, if she was if she won the primary in 2020, she could have ran against Trump in 2020. Now she's part of Trump's cabinet, or wants to be part of Trump's cabinet. She's famous for being, again, a former Army veteran, ex-House representative from Hawaii, famous for her more isolationist views on foreign policy, and again is very critical of the deep state of the administrative state. And she's going to be in charge of the, again, Director of National Intelligence, so foreign policy advice, all of this stuff. So people, particularly more traditional Republicans, were a bit, maybe surprised by that. Then you've got the border czar, a guy named Tom Homan. Tom Homan, have you heard of this guy?
This is the one from the Texas.
I think he's from Texas, yeah.
Okay.
So again, this guy is hardcore when it comes to immigration. Yeah. He was the former ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement head under Trump for I think about a year. Former Border Patrol, staunch border hawk. So he said at the Republican National Convention to illegal immigrants, "You better start packing now," to everybody, because if Trump was going to win, that they were going to try to kick people out.
Was he involved in the last year tensions on the border in Texas?
Good question. I vaguely remember seeing him somehow involved, but he wasn't in any position of power. So if he was, it would have been just from from a media perspective or from a commentary perspective.
Because I think I read that he was one of the not formal, but one of the acting leaders during these tensions.
So not under Biden. So he was the acting head, I think, from 2017 and 2018. We can fact check to see if maybe he did have a role under Biden. I'm pretty sure he didn't, because again, he's very staunchly against what Biden was doing with immigration, and obviously wants to change things pretty substantially. So again, he really wants to crack down on the border. And then we've got something called DOGE, which I think you might want to talk a little bit about. Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to be leading that initiative. So DOGE stands for not the coin, not the crypto, but the Department of Government Efficiency. So their task is to eliminate waste in the U.S. federal budget. Federal budget is $6.5 trillion. Trump has asked them, find whatever you can, eliminate the waste. Elon Musk is saying maybe they can find up to $2 trillion of waste. We'll see if that actually happens. But from my perspective, high-level summary, I'm seeing a lot of Trump loyalists. I'm seeing a lot of anti-administrative state. I'm seeing a lot of border hawks. I'm seeing a lot of Iran hawks, China hawks, and very, very much a pro-energy administration. So again, I would say Trump 2.0 will be Trump on steroids. So again, less folks who are against his vision, people who are more loyal to him. And then again, I think you're going to have more, combative policy towards China, towards Iran. Obviously, big focus on the border, pro-energy, but that's sort of what I'm seeing very high level from Trump so far. Anything from your side? What are you seeing?
From first of all, from your overview, what I noticed that there are quite some female names in the office.
Yeah,
and it goes actually against the narrative that media try to portray, that like Trump is against women, like he will never promote women, and so on and so on. I think actually it is the example of he's actually trying to make the balance in the office.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that was, again, one of those criticisms that always seemed a little bit, people were grasping at straws, right? Yes, he said things that are offensive to people, obviously, but to call him a blatant misogynist, right? A blatant racist. You can say he's maybe said things that are misogynistic or racist. You can make the argument, but yeah, I mean, obviously how can he be a complete misogynist and be anti-women if he's appointing women to his cabinet? Totally agree.
Yeah. I think from the international perspective, everybody was he was famous for saying I will end up the conflict between Russia and Ukraine in 24 hours, right? But I think what we observed in his first contacts, he made a couple of first contacts with the Ukrainian president. He talked to European heads, and the common narrative that I noticed is he's way more balanced in reality. Whenever they talk to him, I think the German chancellor said this, that his media position and his media position is way more extreme compared to his one-on-one talks. So, and if I look at my home country in Russia, how they reacted. So first of all, I think it's very noticeable that Putin actually congratulated Trump being elected as a president. He didn't do it before. He didn't do it to Biden. He didn't do it, and nobody was expecting him to congratulate Trump as well. It's kind of a diplomatic etiquette, but it shows the readiness to work with the president or not. So I think it's some of the signs. I don't know. At the same time, the common media narrative again that Trump being pro-Russian, he has never been pro-Russian, and I'm sure he will never be pro-Russian because anyway, Russia is considered to be one of the top enemies enemies or rivals to America. So the first reaction, also what I noticed in the media back in Russia, it was in regards to Ukraine. What do they think is he will be pushing both sides, and he will be pushing both sides to negotiate to find some kind of a deal, but the way he's going to be pushing this is very challenging, and this is very interesting and very controversial, because how you can push two countries that are in a military conflict, you can either force one of them to surrender, or you can support it to the ends where another side will have to surrender, or you will increase the costs to be unbearable. So this is very controversial, and all the analysts, all the political analysts, all the military analysts, like they are divided now into the forecast and into the expectations. So we will see what will happen, but it can go either direction. Like as anything with Trump, like anything can go either direction. And I personally find very interesting these DOGE.
Before you get into DOGE, I just want to add one more point on the Russia thing. I think everything you're saying is spot on, because again, he always gets everybody takes him literally but not seriously, and I think you should take Trump seriously but not literally, right? So again, take Russia for example. How many times has he talked about, oh yeah, I want to be friends with Putin, I want to be friends with Putin, I want to be friends with Russia? We talked about it in one of our previous episodes. Trump was the first president to give lethal weapons to Ukraine. Exactly. So you say he's so pro-Russia, but Putin himself has also said, Trump is not necessarily so pro-Russia at all. He has nice rhetoric, but the actions aren't necessarily there. And I think Russia's actually maybe hedging its bets a little bit, because what Trump could do, Trump is also very much a personality-driven guy, right? Ego-driven guy, these type of things. If he views Putin as insulting him, so if he wants to make an offer to Putin and Putin doesn't want to play ball and doesn't want to negotiate with Trump, I could also see Trump. I'm not saying I think this will happen, but I could see Trump saying, okay, fine, we're going to rush all this military equipment to Zelensky, to Ukraine, to help them. If you don't want to negotiate with me, you got to come sit at the table, because I told my people I'm going to make a deal. I want to make a deal. I could totally see that happening. So I think Trump is, again, unpredictable, and that unpredictability is one of his assets. You just don't really know what you're going to get. So it could go either way, as you said, but that'll be interesting. Anyways, go back to DOGE.
100%. And this is exactly the debate between the military analysts. Like they don't know what to expect, and again, as we said, either direction. To the DOGE. DOGE.
Yeah, I don't even know how you pronounce it, but so we can go with DOGE.
Government efficiency. I think it's a very interesting initiative, because I did some research, and there is an index called like Good Government Index made by Chandler University. They rank the governments based on the 7 parameters, starting from the leadership to the law, efficiency of the institutes, ability for people to get promoted socially, economically, and so on, the education, healthcare, a lot of parameters, like in 7 clusters. According to this index, currently the United States is number 15th in the rating, while Singapore, for example, is number 1.
For efficiency, government efficiency.
Government efficiency.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the overall idea, UE, for example, where we are right now, is 14th.
Okay.
Above the US.
Of course, I'm not surprised.
United Kingdom is number 11.
Wow.
I'm surprised.
Now I'm surprised by that. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So
efficient. Well, I don't want to criticize the UK government too much, but efficient in sometimes not always achieving the objective. Anyways, that's a whole different topic.
Right. Yeah. And like in particular, for example, America is going down in terms of the ease of doing business in this particular index, in this particular rating, while UE, on the contrary, is number 1 in this.
That didn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, didn't surprise me at all too. So I think the idea of increasing the governmental efficiency, and like we understand that the institutions in the US, they're like quite old, even though quite well established and balanced. But I think it's a very good idea to look at this from this perspective, to look at this from the efficiency perspective. Very interesting promise, as you mentioned, like to cut the expenses in 2 trillion. I think he also promised to cut several thousands of jobs. What was it? Was it 80,000?
I would say at least. I mean, the federal government is multi-million man labor force. I think it's the biggest human organization on the planet, is my understanding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I like the announcement they made for hiring people. You should get ready to work 80 plus hours a week, probably for free. And we need like top 1 candidates. And if you are not interested in working for free and giving like your whole life to us, don't even send your resumes. Yeah. Very interesting. I'm really looking forward to see what will happen. In this regards.
It's going to be interesting. I think to your point though, again, it's a huge budget, right? $6.5 trillion. Interestingly, so I think Musk came out and said that he said it sort of off the cuff at a rally, so he might not have really thought through what he was saying, but he threw out the number of $2 trillion that they would try to find a cut. The issue with that is I was listening to a video from Larry Summers, famous economist, and he was saying that the U.S. discretionary federal budget, so the amount of money that they actually can choose to change spending on a given year. So again, $2 trillion is discretionary. $4.5 trillion is mandatory spending. So that would be like your entitlement programs, your Social Security, your Medicare, which is the healthcare for elderly folks, the healthcare to the poorer folks. So all of that is mandatory spending. So there's only $2 trillion in discretionary. So if you're going to cut, you would cut from that $2 trillion. So when Elon Musk comes out and says, "Oh, I'm sure we could find $2 trillion to cut," well, probably pretty unrealistic. But again, if you can save $500 billion, if you can, who knows, save $1 trillion, I think to your point, these efficiency measures, they're not bad, right? So let's explore it. Let's see what happens. I mean, I think it's an exciting concept to have, arguably the smartest guy on the planet, Elon Musk, and then another brilliant guy in Vivek Ramaswamy. See what you can do, see what you come up with. And look, I think the U.S. could absolutely use some more efficiency in government.
I also saw the number that SpaceX alone has 3 trillion governmental contracts.
3 trillion.
Yeah, 3 trillion.
Okay, 3 trillion. I'd be surprised. But now that's a whole nother thing, and that's what a lot of critics would say, which is Elon obviously could arguably have ulterior motives. But at the same time, having listened to a lot of Elon, having seen him in a lot of interviews, I really think this guy doesn't really care. I mean, not to say he doesn't care about his wealth, but he already is the richest man in the world, right? He's worth like $200 billion. Is he really losing sleep over government contracts for one of his companies, right? That's just one of them. You still got Tesla, you still got Neuralink, you still have all these other things. That I don't know. And look, you can even make the argument on the corruption point or the alleged corruption, whatever. If Elon would have lost, then what? If Trump would have lost, then what? Right? So then Elon, theoretically, if you're worried about corruption or whatever, then people would have maybe said, oh, well, then is the government going to not work with him for some of these contracts? So I think Elon's actually doing it out of his own, not economic interest, but just personal interest. That he, I think might actually have some positive motives. So
totally agree on this. Like I'm sure these contracts, they didn't appear yesterday.
Yeah, they've definitely been there. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Anything to add on that, or are we good?
Let's see what will happen with the new administration. All that you mentioned, these are the proposals, right? When do we know the actual
what's going to happen?
Yeah, actually, what is going to happen, and the actual when we will see the actual office.
Yep. So Trump enters office January 20th. So January 20th, 2025. Excuse me. So January 5th, 2025 is Inauguration Day. So from there, that's again when his administration starts. So that's when all the appointments will be coming through. That's when the formal government structure will be up in place. But in this interim period from now until then, he is building that framework, right? So he's getting all the votes required for the Senate confirmation, because again, most of these people that I mentioned do need Senate confirmation. So he proposes a person. It's not like he can just appoint anybody and there's no process. He needs the Senate to confirm them with a majority vote. Now, the Republicans will have a majority, but a relatively slim majority, right? 53 out of 100. So he needs 50 votes on everybody. Otherwise, the appointment would be rejected. So again, we'll see what happens. But January 20th is when the administration enters office. Again, my guess is they're going to be much more prepared this time around, knowing how government works. Again, Trump was a businessman before he became a politician, right? So now having that experience, my guess is the framework will be in place, everything will be ready to go. But yeah, January 20th, everything becomes official.
Okay.
So let's see.
Let's see. Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago, we saw that the Democratic Party lost everywhere on all levels. So is there a way to recover? And what do you think, how they will recover? What's the way forward for them? Yeah,
good question. So I think my first message to my Democrat brothers and sisters in the U.S. is not to panic. I think, again, I actually think they could bounce back relatively quickly if they act smart and if they learn the right lessons, I think, from what this election just showed us. So again, a number of things, and me and Roddy spoke about this briefly. I think it was the day after the election, a little bit of what the initial view was on what happened, how Trump sort of outperformed most people's expectations. Again, won every swing state, won the popular vote. Again, it was a clean sweep for the Republicans. They really, I think, did better than most people thought they were going to do. That being said, I would say some of the takeaways for the Democrats, first and foremost, number one thing for them to do is to hold an actual primary. Actually let your voters, the Democrat voters, select who the candidate is. So if you look back really over the last 8 years, it has not been a Democratic party, despite the fact that it has Democrat in the name, right? 2016, I think, I don't know if you knew about this, but Roddy and I talked about it. So Hillary Clinton came into the primary already like 1/3 of the way to the nomination because of superdelegates, which are essentially just party officials and all that who put their hands on the scale for the voting process to pick the Democrat nominee. Okay, so Hillary essentially had won it before she even got there. In 2020, Biden was losing in the primary, and right before one of the critical states, there was like 3 or 4 Democrat candidates who all backed out at the exact same time and endorsed Biden because they wanted to rally around Joe Biden because they thought he was the candidate most likely to win, or the left-wing populists would argue because he was the candidate of the party, of the entrenched interests, whatever. So again, kind of a skewed process from a Democratic perspective. And then obviously 2024, you didn't have a primary at all. So everybody knew Biden was flawed. Everybody could see it in the videos. Everybody could see when he was speaking that he had lost a step or a couple steps. And then the debate revealed it, and they didn't even have a primary. So I would say number one thing, actually have a primary. The Democrats have a lot of policy issues to work out amongst themselves on economic policy, on social policy, on a lot of these issues, immigration policy. But again, I think there's still hope for them. I think what was so interesting is that Trump won literally every subgroup he got more support with. So every racial group he actually expanded support with, except white people. So the Democrats, who've traditionally been the party of, who've had the majority of minority groups supporting them, Trump expanded his support across all of them. He won the most Hispanic support of any Republican in recorded history. So this is a huge problem for the Democrats. But again, all they need to do is actually fix the message, right? So they were running. So in their defense, they put someone like Kamala Harris up there, the sitting VP for a race where 2/3 of the American public was saying that the country was moving in the wrong direction. And then you put someone from the same administration to be the candidate. And when she was asked what she would change about the 4 years that Biden was in power, she said she couldn't think of anything to change. So not a great candidate. The administration was very unpopular. But if they just tweak their message on the 2 top issues, the economy and immigration, I think suddenly they certainly could win again. So again, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. Again, some of these topics have so far gone in one direction. So things like immigration policy. Immigration, I think Trump won that issue by like 20 points or more than 20 points. It's very obvious you need to change your border policies. That's it. Okay. So change the border policies, come more to the middle of the American public. You can stay left on, I think, a lot of the economic issues. But then it comes down to how extreme do you want to be on some of these more social policies? So whether it's the sort of the gender policy, whether it's police policy, these types of things that are very outside of the mainstream when it comes to most Americans. I think they could certainly bounce back pretty quickly. And again, look, they didn't even lose by that much, right? I think the biggest shock for the Democrats was they lost the first popular vote since 2004, right? They felt like they got beat pretty bad. And look, they did, but it wasn't a landslide. I think that's the one thing that I would caution the Republicans against saying. It wasn't a landslide. You won by 2 points nationally. Barack Obama won by 6 points nationally in 2008. Biden won by 5 points in 2020. So Trump won a mandate, no doubt, but it wasn't a landslide election. So the Democrats certainly can bounce back. I think the one thing they can't do is to blame the voters. That's the thing that I've seen from them, or at least from some of the media aligned to them, who've come out and accused the American public of misogyny, of racism, of these types of things, which, again, of all the options you have to try to salvage your political future and to improve your political future, do not blame the people you want to make vote for you. How does that make any sense? But I think that's what some of them are doing. Now, a lot of them also aren't doing that, which is smart. So I don't know if you know AOC, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes,
okay.
I heard of her.
Yeah, so she's a left-wing populist. She's considered to be one of the farthest left members of Congress. She even came out and took down her pronouns. She had her pronouns in her bio, I think, on Twitter or Instagram or something like that. So in sort of this gesture of, I'm going to try to moderate my own politics on these social issues, she took her pronouns down, which was kind of interesting. Small thing, purely symbolic, but I think the idea is to try to come to the middle on some of these issues. Just don't be so far outside the mainstream. So I think when it comes to things like that, if they just focus on go back to basics, kitchen table issues, what do people talk about at dinner? They talk about the economy, they talk about immigration, the top two issues in this last election. So if they can just come to a bit of a reasonable position on that, I think they can stay left-wing on the economy. So again, if you want more government programs, you want free education, you want free healthcare, those are popular topics. Go back to that. Focus on those economic issues and how you're going to make people's lives better, instead of blaming, Trump for, instead of calling Trump a fascist, instead of calling his supporters misogynist and racist. That doesn't work, and that will never work. But I do think moderate on the social policies, hold an actual primary where you let your voters pick who the candidate is. And my guess is the Democrats will be very competitive and be back 4 years from now if they do those things. Big if they do those things. I do think probably, so now I'm going to make a guess. I do think that the outcome of that will probably be more of a left-wing populism that we haven't seen, more of a Bernie Sanders type of approach. So did you see what Bernie Sanders posted on Instagram?
Occasionally, yeah. So
he posted something right after the election, and he said this was a stinging rebuke of the modern Democratic Party. And again, he was personally, sort of sabotaged, you could argue, twice by the Democratic Party. And he was saying, we lost working class white voters in 2016. Now we lost working class voters of all races in 2024. Okay. We need to focus on working people. If the Democrats do that, I think go in a bit more of a left-wing populist approach from an economic perspective. If they come back to reality, I think on some of these social issues and moderate on some of these, the border, immigration, and whatnot, I think they'll be very competitive. So that's sort of my take. That's my analysis in terms of, I think, what the way forward is. The Democrats, again, to make the Democrats feel a little bit better, not to piss off the Republicans, but to sort of soothe my Democratic brothers and sisters. 1984, Ronald Reagan won 49 states out of 50. The Democrats won the presidential election in 1992, so only 2 cycles after, and then won in 1996 with Bill Clinton. So the Republicans lost in 1992, 1996. They came back and won in 2000, 2004. Barack Obama won a huge landslide by 6 percentage points in the popular vote in 2008. Donald Trump comes in 8 years later. I think the biggest thing, and another sort of interesting point, I mentioned this on the podcast with Roddy. Jon Stewart, the comedian?
Yep.
So he said something I think really astute and really interesting, which was, when you lose an election, particularly in American politics, I don't know if it applies globally, But typically what ends up being the solution is exactly the opposite of what you expect the solution to be. So for example, when Barack Obama won in 2012, the Republicans were, astounded. How did we lose? We put up Mitt Romney, successful guy, very moderate, well-spoken, all these things. How could he have lost to Obama, who actually by that point wasn't all that popular? There was some issues in the country. People weren't really happy with the direction of the country. So everybody was saying, okay, Mitt Romney, Republican Party, how do we go forward? We need to moderate on immigration. We need to be a little bit more soft on these issues, try to attract Hispanic voters. And then who comes to power in the Republican Party? Donald Trump, the exact opposite. So all these smart people, all the political pundits were saying, come to the middle on this issue. Trump goes to the far end on that issue, and he wins the election. And then people said, oh, okay, well, Hillary Clinton lost. We need a young candidate, somebody charismatic. Hillary wasn't very charismatic nor young. Yeah. And then who do they put up? The oldest candidate up to that point in history in Joe Biden, and he wins. And then the Republicans say, okay, why did we lose? We got to ditch Trump. No, we go back to Trump, and then he wins. So I think whatever the mainstream thinking is, and right now the mainstream thinking is the Democrats are too far left. I have a feeling that's not going to be the right takeaway. I actually think they will move farther to the left next cycle on economics. And if they do that while moderating on the other issues, right? They got to moderate somehow. I think they'll be very competitive. So that's my assessment. I think we'll see if it pans out, but I wouldn't be too despondent if I was the Democrats. Again, this stuff is cyclical. It's a pendulum. It swings back and forth. So that's my take. Yeah. But anything from your side?
Yeah, I saw a couple of interviews with the voters right before the elections, and the interesting thing I noticed, actually, to your point on the policies, what I noticed is a lot of people who was going to vote for Democrats, what they said it was like this: I don't like or I don't understand the program of the Democrats. I like the program of the Republicans, but I cannot vote for Donald Trump, so I will vote for Kamala Harris. So what I'm thinking based on this is the Democrats, they should streamline the program, like clarify it, make the clear points. What is your program? What is your agenda? What are the policies you want to put in place? Because Republicans are quite clear about this. And even in the debate, I think we saw it. And the whole program of Kamala Harris was like, everything will be good if I take the office. Everything will be good, and I'm not Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. This is not the program. Exactly. You don't give anything to to the voters. You don't give them actual content. So probably to your point is what will help the parties to actually streamline the program, to clarify what you're going to achieve, what you're going to do. And the second take, again, from the same interviews, a lot of people mentioned that I am still with the Democratic Party, but what I don't like is how left it become. That it's becoming too socialistic, too unattractively, uncomfortably socialistic. And in the people who's been raised in the whole capital world, in the capitalism, they didn't want this direction. So probably, again, if you're saying that they will go even far to the left, probably this will be the not the best way to do for them. They should stay more centric. So yeah, that's totally agree.
Yeah, but it's an interesting take. So I think to your point about the Harris point, I think she fell into the Hillary Clinton trap. She fell exactly into the Hillary Clinton trap, where again Hillary had all these policies but never talked about them. You never could articulate clearly Hillary Clinton stands for X, Y, and Z. I think Hillary, again, very, she was a political machine. She's been in, she had been in politics forever. Very intelligent woman, no doubt about it. But I think she just fell into the trap of, I'm going to demonize Trump, right? She did the basket of deplorables where she called half of Trump supporters racist, misogynist, sexist, homophobes, whatever you want to call it.
You can put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
I think, again, that hurt her, obviously, because then it's like, okay, great, you are telling me not to vote for this person, but then who are you telling me to vote for? What am I voting for? Kamala did the same thing. Yeah. So again, Kamala, she had all these policies. Oh yeah, $50,000 for small business. No, give me something tangible. Trump is very clear. We're going to tariff the hell out of everybody. Foreign policy is going to be, we're going to be so strong. We're going to whatever, we're going to build the military. Very clear sound bites, easy to understand. border. We're going to close the border. We're going to build a wall. Where was Kamala's policy on immigration? Honestly, nobody has any idea. And I follow politics all the time. I had no idea what her actual policy was going to be. So I think, as you said, streamline the program, be clear. The left-wing point, though, that's where I think it's going to get interesting, because I think, again, the Democrats can move farther to the left on economics if they moderate on the other issues, because they've gone too far, I think, for most people on the other issues. But anyways, I think we've clarified that point. So next question, Vlad. With the German government collapsing, will the new German elections in February mark a key moment in the rise of the far right?
I think the moment of the far right rising, it won't be the next elections. I think this moment was a couple of years ago already, because if you look at the parliament voting of the recent years, you could see the rapid rise of the Alternative for Germany party. I think it was... it started actually in 2021, where, in 2021, where I think you can see the chart over here, where it was the skyrocket rise of the Alternative German popularity. And I think it won't be the pivotal moment, but they will continue rising. So that's my take. So what I notice, based on the news, based on what I hear from the people living there, is the country is shaking. The country is shaking politically. Country is shaking socially. Country is shaking economically. We can all see that there's numbers. They had the very rapid economic growth right after the COVID recovery. They hit more than 4% of GDP growth. Now it's all around zero, plus minus 0.5%, which is nothing for the company for the country that is considered to be the leading European economy. Next point over here, another problem there is they face a lot of competition from China from the manufacturing perspective. I think the leading car manufacturer Volkswagen has announced to close 3 plants in Germany, cut several tens of thousands of jobs, freeze everybody's pay and make the 25% salary cuts over the recent 25% salary cut over next 2-3 years, and freeze the salaries as well. And they openly say that it's probably not the end. They actually facing the worst economic decline since 90s. And they used to be and they are, I think they are the icon of Germany manufacturing, clear problem. So, and then add to this all the immigrations problems, add to this a lot of social expenses that they must keep. So the country is shaking on this, and I think this is actually quite reminding. This is a very resembling to early, 1920s, where where we saw the first rapid rise of the far right party. So I think it won't be the pivotal moment, but I think it's already rising, and we can see not only in Germany, we can see that the Italy government is becoming more far right. We can see Austrian government is becoming more far right. Hungary is there. So there are quite some far right flames in Europe. I don't think it will be a radical far right, because the right political program today is very different from right political program 80 years ago. They're not militarists. They're not nationalist in terms of dominance of one nation over another. It's more of nationalism, protect national interests, protect your own people, be less in favor of immigration, be more conservative in terms of economy. So I kind of understand this agenda, and when the country is shaking, I can totally understand people supporting them. So my point is they're rising, and we will continue them getting the more popularity. And I think the good outcome for Germany and good strategy for Germany will be to try to find a coalition between the centric and right.
The center and the far right.
Center and the right.
So that's interesting. I broadly agree. I think in some ways it will be a pivot point, but again, we're saying the same thing, only a pivot point in the sense that I think they're going to win a significantly larger share than before.
Right.
And I want to address another point that I just recently found out about and recently read about, which is also the rise of the far left in Germany. So what you're now seeing is that populism across the board is on the rise in a pretty substantial way. So again, I don't need to reiterate all the points you made. GDP is projected to decline last year, declining this year. Industrial production is down for the industrial powerhouse of Europe. Migration, we know about that. The population is in decline. By the end of this decade, it's going to be smaller than it is now. The Ukraine war has obviously had a huge impact economically. No more gas from Russia, or much more limited amounts of gas from Russia, hurts Germany massively. It's been a disaster for Germany since COVID, really. But what we're seeing now is that there's also, not only is the far right now polling, I think, at about 20%. So they won in that election in 2021. I think it was about 10 or 11%. They're now polling at double that, which is obviously a huge gain in support. But you also have a new populist left-wing party, only founded this year. It's called the BSW party, founded by a woman named, I don't speak German, so I'll just try on this one, Sarah Wagenknecht.
Okay.
Don't know if that's any good.
Sounds German.
It sounded German, right? So if any of our German, anybody watching is German, they can correct my pronunciation. But this lady has started a party as of this year, again, back in January. She's branding it a left conservative party. So it's almost exactly what I was just talking about with the possible future of the Democratic Party.
Okay.
Which is, and this is wild, right? She's talking about that the party stands for traditions, stability, and security. A left-wing party, traditions, which is typically not what the left-wing party stands for, stability, security. She's opposed to migration, so the migration policies of Angela Merkel, which is interesting, right? So a left-wing leader, a far left-wing leader, is opposed to the immigration policies of what the center-right had done. Merkel was center-right. So that's, again, heterodox, and that's, I think, formulating what this new era politically we're entering in globally is, which is a populist era. Globalism, I think, is going by the wayside pretty quickly. She's also strongly opposed to Ukraine military aid. Very important topic. So what you said was obviously true. It's not about militarism. It's not about invading your neighbors like it used to be, 100 years ago, 80 years ago. But it is about, do we stay in the current arrangement with the American-led order, right? So obviously, if the Americans, now maybe Trump doesn't want to also support Ukraine military aid, but if that was what the Biden administration or what some of the American policymakers want, and some of these European countries are saying, no, we're out, we don't want any more of this, that in and of itself is a major shakeup geopolitically. So that's what she's calling for as a left-wing populist party. The right wing is already calling for that. The AfD party, for example. Yeah. So now you're getting the two populist sides of the political aisle agreeing on a lot of stuff. No to Ukraine military aid, no to migration, supporting family values is pretty wild, actually. And there's a lot of positive words that have been exchanged between the far right and the far left party. She also, this also blew my mind. She voted against a bill to make it easier to change your gender legally in Germany. So this is
far left.
This is exactly what I was saying about the Democrats. If you moderate on these other issues, you can go farther left on the economy, because the economy is really what the pressure point in society is today. It's economy and immigration, and it's going to remain that for some time, I think. So again, you have an immigration hawk, anti-military aid to Ukraine, skeptical on modern gender policies, but a staunch defender of the welfare state. Again, traditional left-wing, left-wing policy, which is the welfare state and strengthening the welfare state. And her party is polling 8% nationally. So I just want to go through the numbers a little bit. Right now, what you're polling at in the German election is the center-right party, so Angela Merkel's former party, 32%. The AfD, the far right, 19%. Yeah. So the right is really dominating, right? The current government, so Olaf Scholz's government, 16%. Then her party, this upstart left-wing populist party, 8%. The Green Party, 10%. And then the other far left party is at 4%.
Green is also considered left.
Yeah, but they're not considered far left, right?
Yeah,
their main focus is the economy. So if you're looking at this, I'm looking at 2021 as you mentioned, and it was a huge year for the AfD, for the far right party, Alternative for Deutschland, and they won 10%, and that was the first time I think they had crossed the 10% threshold. The left-wing party called again, I don't speak German, Die Linke, I don't know how to say that, but they got 5% back in 2021. If I add up the far right and far left this time around, right? So they had 15% collectively for 4 years ago. You now have the AfD at 19. You have this new party at 8, and then the left at 4. That adds up to 31%. So you're looking at a doubling of support from the populist on both sides. So again, doubling from the AfD and doubling from the left. So what does that tell you? That tells you that populism is ascendant. We're going to see with this election, it's going to be very interesting, because the more these parties are ascendant, the more difficult it'll be to form a coalition if you're the traditional parties. What that's going to mean is at some point you're going to have to work with either one of the more populist parties, or you're going to continue to probably lose elections. So I totally agree with you. This populist right wing and left wing is ascendant. It's not going anywhere. They will come to power. It's just a matter of time. And I think it's fascinating what we're seeing. This is a complete political realignment globally, where again, it's nationalism, it's populism. This is the future.
I think the way I see it, German parliament is always about the coalitions. So I think what we will see is the alliance between some like the centric party and one of these left or right. I think we will see the alliance.
They've all ruled out forming a coalition with the far right, which is obviously an issue.
Right.
So something has to give.
Yeah.
Okay. So last question, Vlad. So Starbucks, the king of coffee, the American king of coffee, go ahead, enjoy your Starbucks. The American king of coffee, you could argue the global king of coffee. They've had a bit of a rough patch recently from an earnings perspective, from a revenue perspective. Is your beloved coffee company going to lose its status as the king of coffee? What's your take?
Cool. I'd love to talk about this. Yeah, as you mentioned, I love them. Like for me, I don't know, since my teenage time, I was imagining, myself going to the office, taking the cup of Starbucks coffee, like wearing the suit, and like for me, like to me, it was like the symbol of me growing up, being like successful person and so on. Like it's just the symbol. Yes, you're right. What we've seen over the recent several quarters, they reported is like stable decline in their sales, stable decline in the economy. That's why they appointed a new CEO, like with a record compensation package of $113 million. He got like just $10 million as a signing bonus. Like I wish we could get it. Like incredible. However, he's also famous for like being super successful in turning things around in the chain. I don't think that they will lose the status of the king of coffee, whatever, because if we look at the coffee industry globally, have you heard of 3 waves of coffee?
No.
Okay, so...
What is that? Americano, cappuccino, and frappuccino?
Think bigger. Don't be so narrow-minded. So...
You were going to make an American joke, weren't you?
In 19th century... like where the coffee culture appeared, it was the first wave of coffee. They started as like coffee shops at the, like famous Grand Cafes, European places where you could see Sigmund Freud drinking coffee with water, like Austrian style. Then with the modernization and industrial economy, they introduced the instant coffee, something you could get from the jar and like make it at home. So they made it super affordable for everyone. That was the first wave of coffee. Then, in 1970s, 1980s, we got this, which is the second wave of coffee. A lot of coffee shops, coffee chains, coffee to go. This is where it appeared. Now, we observe so-called third wave of coffee, which is a specialty coffee, where you get the V60, Colombia, Brazil, Ethiopian beans raised like here and there, where actually consumers, they understand that coffee as a product, as a bean, is very rich and can be very different. This in the same way as wine. So they understand that coffee can be consumed, can be considered, can be understood completely differently, the same way as wine can be. Like it can be acidic and it can be sweetened, it can be with chocolatey notes, fruity notes, hazelnut, whatever, nutty notes, and like you can feel this. So now we have the wave of the specialty coffee. Where I'm leading to this. With this,
I was going to say you really like coffee.
I do, and I'm trying to be even like more into this. And if you look at Starbucks, they've been like huge success since late 80s. They have like 35,000 locations. They even introduced their own like latte index, the same way we have as a Big Mac index, like costs of Starbucks tall latte in different cities, which illustrates the economy of these different cities. Like they're super successful, widespread, worldwide phenomenon. But then when this third wave appeared, Starbucks lost its identity. They started they overcomplicated things. The menu became massive. The quality of coffee has been going down, especially when you got the specialty coffees claiming that we know the taste of coffee. Starbucks is like over roasted black stuff. Like, don't drink it. Like, it's for those who don't understand coffee and so on. Then Starbucks tried to introduce this in their coffee shops, making Starbucks Reserve, making the V60 coffee and all this stuff. So they lost their identity. It's pretty much the same thing that happened with Apple before Steve Jobs came back. You had a huge variety of products and you're completely losing your identity. So what the new CEO, Brian Niccol, what he wants to make, he wants to introduce, he introduced the new strategy, saying we will cut off this, we will limit the line of products, and we will make sure that every transaction is 4 minutes or less. Now, on average, they spend 2.5 minutes to make a cup of coffee. Then you plus you add the line, you add the your name, you add your transaction to make the check and all of this. Now it's getting more than 4 minutes. He wants to make it shorter. So everything about the efficiency and everything about to make the coffee closer to the consumer, to make it easier for the consumer to get it. So I think they will definitely get there. And since they still continue their expansion, China, even though there are some closures in China, but still China is the second largest market for them. India is growing market for them. Middle East is very growing, rapidly growing market for them. And they even managed to go to Italy, where Italy was very protective with their own coffee culture. So they opened the first spot in Milan in 2018 and the second in Rome last year. So now they're entering there. So I think they will reinvent themselves. They will increase the efficiency. I think we will see much shorter menu in Starbucks. And yeah, we'll see. I think they will remain, I don't know, king of coffee or not, but the dominant coffee chain in the world, of course.
This reminds me of the Linkin Park discussion we had in our first episode. I think Starbucks is screwed. I think they're screwed. I'm not going to lie. I don't like Starbucks. I hate Starbucks. That's why I purposefully got this, Balade coffee here instead to not drink Starbucks. Couple of reasons for that. Let me just have a sip of my not Starbucks coffee first. Couple of things. It's overpriced. It's overpriced coffee. So why am I paying a premium for something that at the end of the day is pretty simple? Coffee, right? The bean is the same, right? You can have different beans, Ethiopian beans, Brazilian beans, however many different beans you mentioned. Fine. It's still coffee. You want to get into all the specialty coffee? Fine, you can if you want, but anybody can do that. There's nothing unique about the product. There's nothing unique about Starbucks. It's just overpriced. And again, it's got a nice feel to it. The brand is all right, but who wants to spend all that additional money for something that, again, anybody can make? I don't find anything. I'm okay with it. Yeah, you're okay with it. I know. You have some fascination with the brand. That's fine. Again, Dunkin' Donuts is cheaper. You can buy your own coffee beans. There's 1,000 different options when it comes to coffee, to doing it more cheaply. Again, if the economy is under pressure and we have inflation, which is higher than average, if we're looking at GDPs that are in decline, who the hell wants to spend money on coffee and pay 30% more? It just doesn't make any sense logically, in my opinion, okay? That's one thing. Again, Starbucks, I don't think is all that brilliant of a company either. There's huge geopolitical risk. So they want to expand into China. Well, that's risky, right? So if you're looking at continued conflict, continued geopolitical risk, continued trade conflict between the Chinese and the Americans, why are you going to be betting so big on China? How much money you need to pour into China to open up stores, to do this, to do that? How quickly before a Chinese company is just going to come up and overtake you? It already has happened, actually. I don't know if you read this, but as of this year, a company called Luckin, a Chinese company, is now the largest coffee chain in China. Of course it is. And the Chinese government, I'm sure, is going to support that because then that money gets to stay at home in China. Starbucks just invested $200 million in a new campus in China, which is a production and distribution center, the largest ever that a coffee company of any kind has built outside the US. So Starbucks is doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on China in an era when the Chinese economy is faltering, American-Chinese relations are continuing to sour, not getting any better. No, I think this is a terrible move. So yeah, again, I literally pulled this quote from their 10K report from earlier this year. Again, they've been reporting this for years. Due to the significance of our China market for our profit and growth, we are exposed to risks in China, being a particular risk to Starbucks as a company. So I think that risk is only going to get worse. I think that risk is going to metastasize and be a problem for them. And again, even in the home markets, in the American market, who wants to spend all this additional money in an era of higher inflation, in an era of greater economic uncertainty? No, I think Starbucks is not in a good position. I'm not saying they're going to go bankrupt or anything like that. They do have a ton of debt, but no, I don't like the outlook for Starbucks. I think its stock price is overvalued. I think as a company in general, I think it's overextending itself. So no, I don't think Starbucks will be the king of coffee. No, I think Starbucks is in trouble. So
they have already established the market in China. I think consumer market has nothing to do with the geopolitics. Like the coffee, where you have your geopolitical tensions, where you have the coffee, like it's nowhere near.
No, of course.
It's not even the technology, not even the consumer technology. It's like it's very far from all these tensions.
What did the Chinese government do with Apple, for example? So
Apple is the technology.
Okay, I mean, but what's to say there's not a marketing campaign within China to say, be patriotic, buy Chinese, don't buy Starbucks?
Okay,
Very simple.
They have enough people for everyone. In here, by the way, in Dubai, where both of us live, what is the average price of a cup of cappuccino, for example?
I don't know. I don't shop at Starbucks.
It's not about Starbucks. Like overall, like when you buy
20 dirhams. So what's that? $5.
20 dirhams. 20 dirhams.
Yeah.
Starbucks costs 16 dirhams. Overpriced coffee, which is cheaper than average.
Well, I don't buy cappuccinos either, so I could be wrong. But okay, if you say so.
I mean, I know they claim to be overpriced, and if you compare them with Dunkin' Donuts in America, they're like twice of the price. But again, like Dunkin' Donuts is impossible to drink. Anyway, and actually, like they created all these coffee shop culture with the cups, and everybody just took their model.
Have you been to Costa Coffee?
Yeah,
exact same.
No, it's impossible. It's
same.
impossible to drink, and it costs more.
It's impossible to drink.
It's impossible to drink, and it's more expensive.
This is like a very what's it called? A very arrogant palate. Oh, I can't drink that. It's the same. It's the same.
Actually, again, 16 dirhams for a cappuccino in Starbucks versus 19 in Costa Coffee.
Okay, so under that logic, Starbucks will remain the king of coffee. We'll see. Like I said, I don't think so. I think there's a ton of risks there.
And also, I think their franchise model is pretty interesting. Because I haven't heard honestly about this campus in China that they invested, but in many countries where they go in, they just sell the franchise. So it's not like the huge investment in the infrastructure and whatever. They just spread.
Well, they just put 200 million.
That was interesting. That I didn't know. But I think I don't think they're a huge geopolitical risk for Starbucks. We will see. And I think the appointment of the new CEO. Have you seen what happened with the stock price when it was appointed?
Yeah.
That. I think that's a huge impact. It's very interesting.
That's the market getting excited for no reason, as the market tends to. The market is always. What does Warren Buffett say? The market is a voting machine, but in the short term it's a voting machine. In the long run, it's a weighing machine. Yeah. So investors got all excited. Oh, look, this one guy is going to save Starbucks. The stock price goes up 25-30%. Give me a break. I'm not seeing anything in the numbers. I don't think. Again, outlook to me doesn't look good. You can have your CEO. You could pay him double, triple, whatever you want to do. I'm not buying it. Just like Linkin Park is not coming back. Although that one I'm looking not so strong on. No, Starbucks I think is in trouble. I don't think those troubles are going away.
We'll see. I think
they'll get worse.
I'm sure they will reinvent. I'm sure they will split their coffee shops into two parts. So we will have the third wave coffee shops, and they will have this continue. We will see this model continue. I'm sure.
We'll keep trying to single-handedly keep Starbucks afloat. But
me and several hundred million consumers.
It might be over a billion, but we'll see. Anyways, good chat. Anything else to add, or are we good?
No, let's say some good words to our audience and let's wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching another episode of Culture Clash Podcast. If you like our content, subscribe to us on YouTube, like the video as well, follow us on Instagram. And with that, we'll speak to you next week.